Imagine this. One moment, you're being paraded through cheering crowds, cameras flashing, headlines declaring you the future of the monarchy. The next, those same doors slam so tightly shut behind you that even with all your connections, all your wealth, all your media spin, you can't wedge them open again. That's the brutal reality facing Meghan Markle today. And nowhere is that rejection clearer or harsher than in Australia. Now, let's rewind to 2018. Meghan and Harry touched down in Sydney, Melbourne, Dubbo, and Fiji. The tour looked like a triumph. Sun-drenched beaches, school children waving flags, women screaming their names. Newspapers called it a blockbuster success. It was supposed to be Meghan's defining moment, the tour that cemented her as Diana's natural successor. People whispered that she'd brought Hollywood sparkle to a fading monarchy. But while those glossy photos were plastered across front pages, behind the curtain, another narrative was quietly forming. A narrative that now makes it impossible for Meghan to ever step foot in Australia again. Not officially, not diplomatically, not with the red carpet treatment she once demanded. And here's the shocking part. It's not a judge, not a government decree, not even an angry vote that bars her return. It's something more insidious, an invisible wall built from politics, diplomacy, and public opinion. That's what investigative journalist Tom Bauer points out. And when you trace the threads, the picture that emerges is devastating. Because here's the deal, countries don't invite Meghan and Harry anymore. Not for official tours, not for Commonwealth events, not even as symbolic guests. Why? Because behind closed doors, Buckingham Palace and Britain's Foreign Office are sending out a blunt, unmistakable signal. Do not give these two a platform. Period. Australia got the memo loud and clear. And after watching the circus, Meghan and Harry staged in Nigeria earlier this year, where they strutted around as if they still represented the crown, Australia decided they'd had enough. No government wants to deal with that kind of diplomatic chaos. Imagine the headlines. A couple who renounced their royal duties showing up in your country, being mistaken globally for official envoys. The palace had to scramble to clean up the mess after Nigeria. That fiasco was the final straw. And Australia? Australia is not about to become the next stage for the Sussexes' vanity tours. But politics is just one half of the story. The other half is where it gets really humiliating. Meghan and Harry don't actually pay for these glamorous international trips. Not the security, not the staff, not the armoured cars. It's all only possible if someone else foots the bill. And when you're talking about a multi-country Commonwealth tour, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars, easily. Security, accommodation, logistics, the works. And here's the uncomfortable truth. No one wants to cover it anymore. Not governments, not organisations, not even wealthy donors. Because the return on investment is zero. Think about that for a second. Meghan Markle, once hailed as the woman who could modernise the monarchy, now can't even secure funding for a single overseas trip. That silence from Australia isn't just political, it's financial. They simply don't see any value left. And the symbolism cuts even deeper. Meghan believed Australia 2018 was her Diana moment, the time she proved she could carry the Commonwealth on her shoulders. She bathed in the adoration, draped in designer clothes, glowing in the spotlight. But fast forward 7 years and that memory has evaporated. The country that once rolled out the red carpet now shrugs with indifference. She has no royal authority, no public goodwill, and not even a profitable brand worth hosting. Australia has made its choice. Meghan Markle represents nothing. No authenticity, no credibility, no relevance, just faded photographs and broken promises. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is far more brutal than any official ban. And don't think for a second this is just about Australia. This is the canary in the coal mine. What's happening in Sydney and Melbourne is a preview of what's happening across the entire Commonwealth. Governments quietly aligning, slamming doors one by one. Meghan and Harry, once global celebrities, are being locked out. Now, here's where it stings most. Public opinion in Australia has shifted in ways Meghan never saw coming. Back in 2018, polls showed her soaring. She and Harry were the glamorous newcomers injecting life into a stale institution. Today, those same polls place her at the very bottom of royal popularity, neck and neck with royals mired in scandal for years. That's not a dip, that's a collapse. And the reason is painfully simple. Australians value authenticity. They like bluntness. They respect effort. Meghan never gave them that. They never saw her return to nurture the goodwill she'd banked in 2018. They never saw her invest in communities she once smiled with. Instead, they watched from afar as she launched Hollywood projects, signed glitzy deals, and gave interviews filled with grievances. To Australians, that doesn't look like service. It looks like performance. And when people feel you're performing, they tune out. Every staged photo shoot, every press piece about Montecito mansions and private jets chipped away at the illusion of sincerity. The Oprah interview, it played like high drama in America. But in Australia, the inconsistencies, the contradictions, the tone of complaint, it clashed with a culture that prizes resilience and humility. Instead of Diana 2.0, Meghan came across as a Hollywood actress still writing her own script. And here's where the contrast with William and Catherine matters. When they visit, it's community first. Hospitals, schools, Indigenous centres, disaster zones. They kneel down, they listen, they project humility. Meghan and Harry, by comparison, gave the impression they cared more about optics than people. Even staff from the 2018 tour whispered that Meghan was obsessed with angles, schedules, and how she looked. That obsession has only grown more glaring since. Journalists in Australia, who are famously unforgiving, didn't miss the irony either. Meghan railing against media intrusion while simultaneously marketing documentaries, podcasts, and books built entirely on personal revelation. It's hypocrisy, plain and simple. And hypocrisy never survives long under Australia's harsh spotlight. And so the rejection hardened. Today, when Meghan's name makes front-page news in Australia, it's rarely positive. Failed projects, lawsuits, desperate rebranding attempts, it all feeds the perception of decline. Australians who pride themselves on calling out spin see right through it. Which brings us to the financial angle again, the killer blow. Because Australians are practical. They know what royal tours cost. They know taxpayers foot the bill. And when they hear Meghan and Harry only travel if it's free, that flips disappointment into outright disdain. How can a couple with multi-million-dollar Netflix deals and a $16 million mansion still expect handouts? It reeks of entitlement. And entitlement is the one thing Australians won't forgive. That's why the silence matters. No invitations, no offers, no stage, just nothing. For Meghan, who built her life on being seen and adored, that kind of indifference is more painful than open hostility. And in that silence, Australia has delivered its final verdict. Before we dive into part 2, where we'll expose how this freeze-out spreads beyond Australia into the entire Commonwealth, and how Meghan's crumbling brand makes the lockout permanent, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next chapter of this unraveling saga. Because trust me, it only gets harsher from here. So, By now, you see the picture in Australia. Meghan Markle went from the golden newcomer to persona non grata in just a few short years. But here's the catch. It isn't just Sydney, Melbourne, or Canberra closing the door. What's happening in Australia is part of a much larger, coordinated freeze-out across the Commonwealth. And when you connect the dots, you see exactly why Meghan and Harry are finished on the global stage. Let's start with Nigeria, because that trip was the wake-up call for governments everywhere. On paper, it was marketed as a private visit. Just Harry and Meghan showing up, doing some charity appearances, maybe reconnecting with Harry's Invictus connections. Nothing official. But once they landed, it turned into a spectacle. They were treated like visiting royals, complete with receptions, crowds, and headlines calling it a royal tour. The optics were indistinguishable from an official engagement. Photos splashed across international media showed Meghan and Harry walking as though they were still envoys of the crown. That single trip sent shockwaves through diplomatic channels. The Foreign Office had to issue clarifications. Buckingham Palace scrambled to insist it was unofficial. But by then, the damage was done. Nigeria was left with egg on its face. Other Commonwealth governments took notes. And Australia? Australia decided it wasn't going to risk becoming the next stage for Meghan's rogue diplomacy. Because here's the brutal truth. In international politics, clarity matters. Countries need to know who represents the crown and who doesn't. Meghan and Harry blurred that line deliberately. They wanted the headlines, the photos, the adoration, without the accountability that comes with being working royals. It was freelancing, plain and simple. And in a system built on hierarchy, protocol, and symbolism, freelancing is deadly. So, the Commonwealth acted quietly, without press conferences, without dramatic announcements. The word went around: do not invite them, don't host them, don't give them the stage. Protect the institution, protect the clarity. And that silence, the absence of invitations, is louder than any official ban. Now, let's talk about Meghan's brand collapse, because this is where the story gets even more ruthless. Once upon a time, Meghan Markle seemed unstoppable. She had Hollywood recognition, royal status, global headlines. Netflix signed a massive deal. Spotify gave her a lucrative contract. Archewell was supposed to be her empire. But what happened? One by one, those ventures imploded. Spotify? Gone. Executives openly mocked her, saying she wasn't serious, that she didn't produce. Netflix? The big documentary landed with a thud. Critics called it self-indulgent, shallow, little more than a PR puff piece. The so-called lifestyle brand? Vaporware. Announced with fanfare, delivered nothing. Instead of an empire, Meghan's left with a string of abandoned projects, broken promises, and industry insiders rolling their eyes. And here's where the hypocrisy bites again. Meghan branded herself as independent, powerful, free from the monarchy. But every time she tries to launch something outside the royal bubble, it fails. And so she falls back on the one thing she swore she didn't want: exploiting the royal connection. Books about family drama, podcasts about her suffering, documentaries about her life in the palace. Everything loops back to the very system she claimed to escape. That's not independence. That's dependency dressed up as empowerment. And people are noticing. Financially, the cracks show too. When you live in a $16 million Montecito mansion, the world expects you to be self-sufficient. But when reports surface that you won't travel unless someone else pays the bill, that's not liberation, that's entitlement. Flying to Colombia or Nigeria because someone else bankrolled it looks less like humanitarian work and more like freeloading. And for Australia, That alone is disqualifying. They won't sponsor a vanity tour. They won't foot the bill for Meghan to showcase designer gowns while Harry mumbles platitudes about climate change. The cost outweighs any potential reward. And then the desperation creeps in. Meghan showing up at Kevin Costner's charity event, dripping in over $300,000 worth of jewellery, including Diana's Cartier watch. On the surface, it should have been a power move, a reminder that she still has glamour, still has star power. But insiders saw it differently. The same event she once ignored suddenly became worth attending. Why? Because options are shrinking. The jewellery wasn't power, it was camouflage, a shield against irrelevance. And when the shield becomes the story, you know the brand is collapsing. Now let's zoom back out, because this isn't just about Meghan's personal failings. It's about what the Commonwealth has decided. And their decision is final. Meghan and Harry are out. Not formally, not through decrees, but through silence, through absence, through the invisible coordination of governments who don't want confusion, chaos, or spectacle. And here's the harshest part. Meghan Markle is irrelevant now. Not controversial, not too rebellious, not dangerous, just irrelevant. That's the one thing she can't spin, can't PR her way out of, can't distract from. For someone who built her life on being seen, adored, and discussed, irrelevance is the ultimate punishment. The Commonwealth has moved on. The palace has shut the gates. And the public? The public has lost interest. No more cheering crowds. No more Diana comparisons. Just a shrug. And in the world of celebrity, a shrug is the kiss of death. Australia's rejection isn't just about one tour that will never happen. It's the symbol of everything Meghan has lost. The status, the credibility, the global stage, the very things she thought she'd secured forever are slipping through her fingers. And no amount of jewellery, no Netflix deal, no staged photo op will bring them back. So when you see Meghan Markle today, understand this. She isn't the woman conquering the Commonwealth, rewriting the monarchy, or dazzling the world. She's the woman locked out, sidelined, and slowly fading from the conversation. And in the brutal arena of global relevance, that silence is louder than any scandal. This is Meghan Markle's reality now. Not exile, not rebellion, something far worse. Obsolescence. And trust me, when the cameras stop clicking and the invitations stop coming, that's the harshest exile of all. So, what do you think? Is Meghan Markle truly finished on the world stage, or will she somehow claw her way back with another reinvention? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you stayed hooked, and subscribe, because the next expose is going to make this one look like child's play.